Salam, peace be upon you. My name is Muhammad Layak Siddiqui, the father of Holoface. Part 23. What is energy? Energy emerges from phi dynamics as the public ledger of certified change. Where we are. We started with a cup that broke. Instead of saying time passed, we built a system strangers can check. We created folders called state packages, snapshots of what we saw, how we saw it, and our uncertainty. We created receipts called update certificates, proof that one folder legally leads to another. These receipts pass 8 gates. If they fail, we refuse them and learn. We built a graph where dots are folders and lines are receipts. A universe is a connected record. Order comes from receipt chains, not clocks. Change spreads only along legal paths. Laws are registered transformers. We built composition, conservation, interaction, equations, branching, probability, coarse graining, the arrow, objects, and causality. Now we ask, what is energy? The problem with how we usually talk about energy. Most of us learned about energy in school. We heard things like energy is the ability to do work. Energy is stored in a battery. Energy flows from hot to cold. Energy is conserved. These sentences sound simple, but they hide something important. When you say energy is stored in a battery, it sounds like energy is a thing, like milk in a jug. You imagine opening the battery and finding little bits of energy inside. When you say energy flows, it sounds like energy is a fluid, like water moving through pipes. When you say energy is the ability to do work, it sounds like energy is a magical power that makes things happen. These are metaphors. They are useful for everyday talk, but they are not literally true. In holophase, we do not use metaphors as explanations. We ask, what can we actually point to? What can we audit? What can strangers check? The shopkeeper's notebook, a better way to think. Imagine a small shop in a village. Every day, the shopkeeper writes down what comes in and what goes out. Sacks of rice, bottles of oil, pieces of bread, coins, credit. At first, it is messy. Different items, different units. How do you compare a sack of rice with a bottle of oil? How do you know if a trade was fair? Soon, a problem appears. If the shopkeeper cannot convert all these different things into one consistent way of balancing the books, the notebook becomes useless. Two people can argue forever. I gave more. No, you gave less. This trade was fair. No, it was not. Without a shared public ledger, disputes never end. So the shopkeeper introduces a public currency, money. But here is the key. Money is not a magical substance that lives inside the goods. Money is a bookkeeping tool. It makes 2 sacks of rice and 1 bottle of oil comparable with 1 day of labor in a way that can be checked. The currency is not the goods. It is the number in the ledger that lets the goods and actions be balanced in one public system. Energy, in our story, is that kind of public currency. But energy is not invented by social agreement like money. Energy is forced by the structure of certified change once we have built our system of folders and receipts. It is the only kind of tally that can be attached to certified updates, so the chains can be compared, composed, audited, and balanced across different kinds of change. The core idea in one sentence. Energy is not a substance. Energy is the accounting number that becomes unavoidable once we require that all change be public, composable, and auditable. Step 1. Energy must attach to updates, not to things. In everyday language, we say things like, that rock has energy, or that battery stores energy. This makes energy sound like a property of objects. In holophase, we start one step earlier. The only public unit of something happened is an update certificate, a receipt that proves one folder legally led to another folder. If we want to talk about energy as something public, it must first attach to these receipts. Energy is, at minimum, a rule that assigns a number to each certified update. Energy of this update certificate equals some number. Why? Because anything that cannot be attached to the actual receipts cannot be audited. And anything that cannot be audited is not public science in our system. This is the first big shift. Energy lives in the receipts, not in the things. Step 2. Composition forces energy to add up. Now imagine you have two updates in a row. First, folder A goes to folder B, then folder B goes to folder C. You can talk about this as two separate receipts, or as one combined receipt that covers the whole chain from A to C. If the bookkeeping changes depending on how you describe it, if the total is different when you look at two receipts versus one combined receipt, then public science collapses. People could manipulate the numbers by splitting or merging the same history. Therefore, any honest energy rule must respect this. Energy of the combined update must equal energy of the first update plus energy of the second update within our uncertainty. This is called additivity. It is not an optional choice. It is forced by the simple fact that we must be able to chunk and rechunk histories without changing the totals. If someone proposes a different way of tracking that is not additive, it might be useful for some local purpose, but it cannot serve as the public currency of composed change. Energy is the currency precisely because it passes this additivity test. Step 3. The universe graph shows energy as numbers on lines. Remember our universe graph? Dots are folders, lines are receipts. Now imagine writing a number on every line. That number is the energy assigned to that update. A path through the graph, a chain of updates, has a total energy that is the sum of the numbers on each line. This total is well defined only because additivity holds. This is a powerful way to see energy. It is a bookkeeping structure on the paths of change. Step 4. Conservation means you can't create energy by walking in circles. Now imagine a loop in a graph. You start at folder A, go through a series of updates, and eventually return to a folder that is equivalent to A. The same within uncertainty. If the total energy around this loop is not zero, you have created energy by walking in a circle. That would be like a shopkeeper whose ledger shows profit just by moving goods around and coming back to the same place. Public accounting cannot allow this. If you did, auditors could generate contradictions. One route would earn energy, and another route would not, even though both return to the same public state. So a well-behaved energy rule must satisfy. For any certified loop returning to the same equivalence class, the total energy around the loop must be zero, within uncertainty. This is what conservation means in its cleanest form. Conservation is not a metaphysical law. It is the condition that makes the ledger independent of which path you take through the graph. When this holds broadly enough, we can do something beautiful. We can assign a number to each folder, call it the folder's energy, such that the energy of any update equals the energy of the destination folder minus the energy of the starting folder. Energy of A to B equals energy of B minus energy of A. This is why energy can feel like a property of things, but it is actually a consequence of the ledger being cycle neutral. The numbers on folders come from the numbers on receipts, not the other way around. Step 5. Where do these numbers come from? The phi connection. Now we reach the deepest question. What in the actual structure of our folders gives us something to count? A state package is built from public ingredients. It contains invariants that survive when we rename things, measurements of how things change across the window up to a certain detail limit, tokens that track twists and turns in the underlying structure, boundaries and guards that define where the folder applies, explicit uncertainty budgets. A transformer is a registered rule that takes these ingredients and produces new ingredients while passing through the 8 gates. Therefore, any energy number that is public must be computable from these public ingredients. It cannot be a mysterious extra number pulled from nowhere. It must be a function of what is actually in the folders and receipts. What kind of function can survive all the gates? A function that measures how the update redistributes and trades constraints among the ingredients, while remaining additive under composition and stable when we rename things. Think of it like this. The system has pressures, gate constraints, measurement limits, and uncertainty bounds. When a transformer runs, it must respect these pressures. An energy number emerges as the consistent way to tally these pressures across composed updates so that the bookkeeping never depends on how we split the story. In real physics, the energy formulas you learn in textbooks are exactly such tallies. They are built from the same public ingredients, derivatives, invariants, and structure, and they are singled out because they are the additive, conserved bookkeepers across huge families of changes. Energy is the name for the tally that turns phi activity into a conserved public currency of certified change. Step 6. Why energy works across different kinds of change. A currency becomes powerful when you can use it to buy many different things. Energy becomes powerful when it balances across many different kinds of change. Mechanical changes like pushing and lifting, thermal changes like heating and cooling, chemical changes like batteries reacting, electrical changes like currents flowing, radiative changes like light shining. In the universe graph, these are different kinds of lines. In daily life, they look completely different. Yet, the same tally can balance the books when these different kinds of changes are combined into mixed chains. This is not a preference, it is a discovery about the world. There exists a cross-domain conserved additive ledger that survives a huge range of transformations. In our language, we say, energy is the ledger variable that survives the widest family of lawful compositions under the gates. That is why it becomes the public currency of physics. Now we must show that this is not just a tidy story. There is real evidence. Evidence A. Mechanical work turns into heat. A famous experiment. Take a container of water with a paddle wheel inside. Let falling weight spin the paddle. The water warms up. What is happening? A mechanical change, weights falling, leads to a thermal change, water warming. We can build folders for before and after. We can register the transformer family for this kind of change. We can certify the update chain. Then we can test. Is there a number we can assign to the mechanical intervention and the corresponding number for the thermal change, such that the books balance within uncertainty across many trials? The answer is yes. A stable conversion factor exists. The number that balances is what we call energy. This is evidence that a conserved cross-domain currency exists. Evidence B. Additivity, when you split a process. Take one process and do it in one step. Then do the same overall process in two steps. Lift a weight 1 meter in one motion, then lift it half a meter twice. Heat water 10 degrees at once, then heat it 5 degrees twice. Does the total number for the one-step version equal the sum of the numbers for the two-step version within uncertainty? For well-behaved systems, yes. This is evidence that energy is additive under composition, a key property of a ledger. Evidence C. Collisions redistribute without changing total. In collisions, motion changes suddenly. One object slows down, another speeds up. But if the system is closed, nothing escapes our measurement, a certain number remains stable. One object's number decreases as another's increases, but the total stays the same within uncertainty. This is exactly what a ledger does. It redistributes across parts while keeping the total invariant. Evidence D. Batteries power circuits. A battery powers a circuit. Chemical changes in the battery lead to electrical changes in the wire, which lead to thermal changes in the resistor. Different kinds of change, all linked. Yet one number balances across the whole chain. The chemical state of the battery changes. Heat appears in the resistor. The accounting can be made consistent with a conserved additive ledger. This is what it means to say the battery had energy. It means the ledger predicted how far the chain could run before the chemical ingredients no longer supported the same kind of change. Evidence E. Even mass participates in nuclear reactions. Even things we once thought of as solid substance, mass, can participate in the same accounting. What balances the books is not mass alone, but a broader tally that includes mass-like contributions. This strengthens the ledger not stuff interpretation. If energy were a substance, it would be strange that mass can turn into it. If energy is a ledger, it is natural. Different kinds of ingredients can be converted as long as the books balance. What energy is? A simple summary. Now we can say clearly what energy is. Energy is a registered ledger rule that assigns a number to every certified update. This rule must be additive. The number for a combined update equals the sum of the numbers for the steps. Be cycle neutral. Going around the loop and returning to the same state must give a total of 0. Have scope. It must say which transformer family, which domain, and which uncertainty it applies to. Be invariant. It must not change when we rename things or shift our perspective. Be replayable. Another team must be able to compute the same number from the same public ingredients. Carry uncertainty. The number must include an honest accounting of measurement error. When these hold, we can say energy is conserved under that family, not as a metaphysical truth, as a certified pattern. Let us be very clear about what energy is not. Energy is not a substance. If you talk as if energy is a fluid that flows, you are using the metaphor. In holophase, that metaphor is not allowed as an explanation. You can use it as poetry, but not as a claim. Energy is not a cause. Causes are interventions that change what can happen next. Energy is an accounting number that helps you predict and balance outcomes under those interventions. The intervention makes the difference. Energy keeps score. Energy is not primitive. If someone introduces energy without giving the ledger rule, the scope, the invariance tests, the uncertainty, and the audit recipe, the claim is refused. Energy is not absolute. Like any ledger, it is defined relative to a declared scope. The deep structural role, additive conserved currency of composed certified change, is what is universal, not any single number ripped from its context. How this changes how you see everyday things. When you lift a stone, you feel effort. In holophase terms, you are applying an intervention. The energy number for that update is positive in your accounting. When you drop the stone, a different chain occurs. The number redistributes into other channels: sound, heat, deformation. The stone never contained a fluid called energy. The ledger just tracked what kinds of certified changes were possible and how the accounts balanced across the chain. When you feel warmth, you feel motion and collisions at a tiny level, but you do not see the details. So you coarse grain. The energy number is the one that stays consistent when you change your view from fine details to big patterns with honest uncertainty. When you use a battery, you are not releasing a fluid. You are enabling a chain of certified changes across different domains: chemical, electrical, thermal. The energy number is the public currency that makes these conversions comparable. When the books cannot close. Honest refusal. Sometimes the ledger does not balance. This is not failure, it is information. If your system is not closed, if things are entering or leaving without being tracked, the books will not balance. If your ceiling is too low to see the details that matter, the books will not balance. If your uncertainty is larger than the effect you are counting, the books will not balance. In these cases, the honest answer is not to pretend. The honest answer is to issue a refusal certificate stating why the ledger cannot be certified today. Then you either widen your scope, raise your ceiling, reduce your uncertainty, or accept that energy accounting does not apply in this domain. The final picture, the city of receipts. Imagine a city where every action must be receipted. Every trade, every delivery, every repair, every machine run. People can chain actions. They can split actions into steps. They can combine steps into one contract. The city wants disputes to be solved by audits, not by shouting. Very quickly, the city discovers, without a single additive currency, the bookkeeping cannot be public. People can hide inconsistency by changing how they group actions. Auditors cannot compare one chain with another. So the city adopts a public currency, not as a mystical substance, but as the only way to make composable public accounting coherent. Energy is that currency for phi change. It emerges because our system turns change into certified, composable, replayable updates. Composability forces additivity. Auditability forces cycle neutrality. Invariance gates force definitions that survive renaming. Cross-domain composition forces exchangeability. The variable that survives all of that is what we call energy. Energy is the tally of lawful change, not stuff. Tally. What comes next? Now we have energy. We know where it comes from. We know it emerges from tracking differences. We know it balances because going in circles cannot create something from nothing. Next, we will ask, how does this connect to what people call thermodynamics? How do we get temperature, entropy, and heat from this framework? Those are for later parts. For now, we rest here. We have energy as the tally of differences, not a substance, not a fluid, just the number that balances when change is lawful. And we built it all from one simple idea. Energy emerges from phi dynamics. It is the conserved accounting variable of certified change. A final note. This view of energy is not the one you learned in school. In school, energy is often taught as a thing, something that exists, something that flows. Here, we are saying something deeper. Energy is a way of keeping score, a number in a ledger, a tally that balances when the books are honest. This is not a small change. It is a shift in how we understand the world. It means that when you turn on a light, you are not using up energy. You are changing the numbers in the ledger. The total stays the same, but the distribution changes. It means that when you feel warmth, you are not feeling energy. You are feeling molecular motion. The energy is the number that helps us predict how long that motion will last. This shift takes time to absorb. It challenges deep habits of thought, but it is consistent. It is honest. It does not smuggle in substances where only numbers exist. If you want to go deeper, if you want to see the formal work behind this idea, you can find it on Zenodo. Search for holophase. There you will find the actual scientific framework that makes this possible. The mathematics, the proofs, the gates, the registry. This story is just the beginning. The real work is there, waiting for those who want to understand. For now, we have taken another step. Energy is not a thing, it is a number that balances the books of lawful change. That is part 23. That is what energy is. That is our story so far. Always, peace be upon you.